So starting right out, the goal of PriceLabs is, of course, to help you maximize your revenue. And we tried to do this by optimizing both the pricing and the availability of your listing. So two things we're doing here. We're solving that pricing optimization through dynamic pricing, where essentially there's a lot of factors that go into how much someone is willing to pay for a specific listing at a specific time. So things like seasonality, how far out the listing is, location, all these different trends, if there's any events going on and things. So we're essentially trying to capture those trends as much as possible, incorporate those into your pricing so you're always charging the highest rate possible for the given circumstances here. So really optimizing that price of every day in your calendar. And we'll jump into more of the different trends and things that we track here in PriceLabs and things that we see there. So we'll jump into that in a second. And then the availability of your listing, we do that through dynamic minimum stays. So I'll show you all the options in just a second here. But essentially our goal is to always have you take the longest booking possible. So we essentially try to do this by making your calendar open for the longest stay possible. So for all of your far out dates, trying to make sure you require a longer minimum stay to fill your calendar with longer chunks, and then kind of filling those with shorter and shorter stays as bookings get more and more last minute. So we have a lot of settings that essentially help you automate that process. So you're left with fewer gaps in your calendar, less turnover, and essentially more occupancy here. So all these things you could be doing on your own. So you could be going into Airbnb and booking.com, tracking how prices of competitors are changing, tracking different events in your area and adjusting your rates and different things like that, changing all of your minimum stays. PriceLabs is essentially here to automate that process for you, give you access to all of this data so that we can automatically make these adjustments on our end, and then save you time by just uploading these either directly to Airbnb if you're syncing directly there, or directly to your PMS if you're going through a PMS like Lodgify or Guesty or anything like that here. So in terms of our dynamic pricing, the first time you load a listing into PriceLabs, we'll essentially analyze where it's been priced historically and what your kind of listing health has been. So at the rates that you're currently charging, how many people are booking, are you getting a lot of bookings at a low rate, few bookings at a high rate, and so on. And based off of that, we'll estimate this base price for each of your listings. So this is a number that you can definitely change as you go. And we recommend most of our users adjust this to kind of better fit their properties as they see bookings come in. But this will be your average price level for the entire year here. So if you want all prices to go up, you'll simply increase the base rate, all prices to go down, decrease the base rate. And this is going to be how you differentiate between different listing types. So our system, we have no idea if you have an ocean view, if you've been recently renovated, or if you're on the ground floor and your listing might not be looking as great as other ones in the area. So you control that simply by adjusting this base price up and down for different listings here. Onto that base price, we start applying all of our different data trends, where everything is applied as a percentage change to that base. So you can see that base is extremely important since it's the starting point. And then we'll increase prices by a percentage for wherever we determine your high season is, decrease prices wherever we determine your low season is, and so on here. All of the data that we're using to determine, these different trends, so things like seasonality, day of week adjustments, how much prices change day to day, different lead time adjustments, so discounts for last minute bookings, premiums for far out bookings. All of this data is coming from different trends that we're seeing from Airbnb and booking.com, where in most locations around the world, we have about 4 years of kind of historic data that we use to determine these trends. So how much your prices should be changing for different trends going on. Then we also use kind of future data from your specific neighborhood to determine things like holidays and events and what are kind of the highest demand periods in your calendar. So for this kind of future data, we're purely looking at Airbnb here, and we're trying to determine, hey, which future dates are currently getting more bookings than we would expect here. So wherever you see a big spike, that's pretty much an indication that, hey, these specific dates here are getting booked much more strongly than other dates around them in the calendar. So there we know that, hey, these dates have proven to have higher demand. So let's increase your price to try to capitalize off of that. So all of that future demand data is based off of future kind of Airbnb bookings that we see for your kind of very specific neighborhood here on the platform for each of your listings. So this essentially gives you the pricing calendar where you're able to set, of course, a minimum and a maximum price. Then we also do have a lot more control you have over these rates. Pretty much every one of these factors that we take into account, so day of week adjustments, seasonality, lead time and things like that. These are all trends you can adjust on your own. So our algorithm gives you a great starting point based off of the data that we see. But then as you see bookings come in, you can of course kind of customize those recommendations, change some of those trends that we're using and so on. So I'll go over all of those customizations in just a minute here, but jumping into dynamic minimum stays. So this is how we're essentially optimizing that occupancy for you. So here you can of course set a minimum stay for your weekdays and your weekends. So pretty standard here, let's say 2-day minimum for your weekdays, 3-day minimum on the weekends. Then you can specify different things like different minimum stay for last minute booking. So if someone's booking within the last week here, the last 7 days, you can have that minimum stay automatically drop down to 1 night, for example, or 2 nights if you're not comfortable taking that 1 night booking here. Otherwise, you can also specify, hey, for all of my further out bookings, let's say everything more than 90 days out or more than 120 days out, let's require them to book a 5-night stay at a minimum. So anyone who's planning those family vacations far out, anyone who might be booking your high season here, planning any trips or weddings or anything, you make sure that they book a longer stay to not, let's say, block off a prime weekend date during your high season with a 2-night stay when someone else might have booked 2 weeks here. So always going for that longer stay, then we relax these requirements as we get closer and closer to the booking date. Last thing to mention is going to be this minimum stay for orphan bookings, which is a great kind of gap filler tool, where here you're able to specify a length of a gap, and then for any days that are kind of shorter than your minimum stay typically, that fall within this gap here will automatically make them bookable. So if there's a 1-day gap in between 2 bookings and your minimum stay is typically 2 nights, this setting would make that stay bookable for 1 night, and then you could set any premiums or discounts for that 1-night booking, depending on your pricing strategy. Or let's say you had a 4-night minimum, but there's a 3-night gap. This setting here could automatically make that bookable without you going into Airbnb and kind of changing any settings there on your end. So we're about to jump into the PriceLabs platform here. We'll quickly go over kind of connecting your listings to PriceLabs and what that looks like here. Syncing your listings and how that process happens between the PMSs or between Airbnb, all the customization options you have over our pricing, and then some tools for kind of effectively managing your listings in bulk, since I know a few of you have a kind of considerable number of listings that might be a little annoying to start managing one by one here. So if we jump into PriceLabs here, again, as questions come up, do ask those through that Q&A module here in Zoom, and we'll get those answered as we go here. But this is going to be the PriceLabs dashboard. On your end, if you go to hello.pricelabs.co, this is going to be where you can start your trial from. So it's going to be the start your free trial button here in the top right corner, which once you click that, enter some credentials, it'll take you to this page here. And by default, we do start everyone off with a 30-day trial so you can play around with the system, see if it's a good fit for your listings without, of course, committing to anything, but you'll be able to sync prices and test everything kind of as you go here during those 30 days. So the first thing you'll want to do is go up here to this Add Your Listings button. In this dropdown, select your PMS. If you're going directly with Airbnb, select Airbnb. It'll ask you for your login ID and password. After you click connect, we'll send you this 4-digit code from Airbnb, this security code. Type that in, click connect again, and you'll see all of your listings kind of pulled into PriceLabs here. Otherwise, if you're working with a PMS, sometimes they have kind of different API keys and things that they need. So Guesty, for example, just needs one API token, but there's sometimes steps that need to be taken on the PMS's side to activate PriceLabs. So simply go down to this question mark in the bottom right corner, type in the name of your PMS. So let's say Guesty, and then we have lots of articles that kind of take you through the integration process, any steps you need to take to find the API token here, and so on. So that's all there for you. Good kind of tool for your reference. And in general, this tool here, if you do have any questions about any customizations or anything, type in what you're looking for. Let's say minimum stays. And we have different videos, different articles and things that go over all of our settings here. So great resource just to know about. But once you connect your listings, you'll see all of your listings pop up on this homepage here. A couple things to note about the homepage. You have your listing name, of course, listing ID as it appears in your PMS or an Airbnb. This customization group column, where I'll go over groups in a second, but this is essentially a way to group your listings together to be able to manage them in bulk a little more effectively, which gets especially helpful once you have 5, 10 listings on your account here. You can tag your listings to make them more searchable. I, of course, have 2 listings on this account, so not a big deal to try to find these 2. But that can kind of help you with filters. Let's say looking for your 2 bedrooms, then only your 2 bedrooms will pop up here. Last couple things to mention, of course, all of your current price settings. Then most importantly, this sync prices column. So by default, sync prices is going to be turned red for all of your listings, which means that you can adjust prices in PriceLabs. We'll be giving you pricing recommendations, but as long as this is red, no one will ever see these rates. So these rates are kind of kept private. We don't send them out if this is red. Then once you're ready to start syncing rates, you've looked through your calendar and all those things, flip this over to green, and then we'll start pushing updated rates directly to Airbnb or to your PMS once every 24 hours, usually overnight here, central time here in the United States. So once this is green, we'll be pushing updates on a daily basis, but we do have a sync now feature that lets you push those kind of an unlimited number of times here. And then last thing to know on this homepage is going to be the 7, 30, and 60-day vacancy calendar. So this is essentially showing you what percentage of days are vacant in the next 7, 30, and 60 days. So since this is vacancy, a high number in red means not so great, you're mostly empty. So 100 here would mean you're 100% empty over the next 30 days, whereas 33 here would mean you're 33% empty over the next 30 days. So here we have 10 days that are empty over the next 30, whereas here we would have 30 days that are empty over the next 30. So good way to kind of gauge the health of your listings, which listings are getting bookings, which listings aren't, to quickly see if you need to go in, review prices to make some adjustments here. So by clicking review prices right here, this takes you down to your pricing calendar, where looking at all those factors, all those seasonalities, day of week adjustments, so all of that data for your listings. We've compiled kind of pricing recommendations here, where every day is associated with both a price and a minimum stay that is influenced by what's going on in your kind of neighborhood, what's going on in that booking calendar here. So these rates, as I mentioned earlier, are largely influenced by this minimum base and maximum price here on the left-hand side. So as I was saying, we'll estimate this base price for you. But if all of your prices are showing up lower than expected or higher than expected, simply take this base and increase it by any amount, click save and refresh, and we'll kind of regenerate rates at that higher base. So increasing the base scales everything up, decreasing it scales everything down. So the first 2 weeks or so, I typically recommend keeping a close eye on bookings that are coming in. Of course, a little different booking trends going on here than we typically see, just with the whole coronavirus crisis going on. But adjusting that base rate will definitely move your prices up and down. Prices will never go below any minimum you set or above any maximum. So this is taking a second to load. Not sure what's happening here with this test listing. But then another thing to note, so you can of course move that base price up and down, but then you can also adjust prices for any dates simply by clicking and dragging over them in the calendar here. So let's say you knew there was a conference in town from May 27th to the 30th, but our system for some reason wasn't picking up an increase in bookings yet. You can click and drag here over any dates and then either set your own fixed price here. So you can say, hey, here, I know I want to charge $175 a night. You can set a % adjustment to our rate. So you could say, hey, your rate's pretty good, but let's charge 25% more. Or you can just change your minimum price here. So you could say, hey, I want to have a minimum price of $150 here, but if demand picks up and you think I can charge more, feel free to increase my price past $150, for example. So a lot of different customizations you can do day by day here, additionally changing the minimum stay. So you can say, hey, here I want 4-night minimum instead of my typical 2-night minimum. Just click add, and that'll be saved as an override here in your calendar. One thing that's good to mention, when setting your minimum, base, and maximum, this base price help button here on the left-hand side, so this blue text right under minimum, can be a great tool to look at some market data here. So this will essentially show you what different bedroom types are going for in your market here. So here, let's filter by 1 bedroom, for example. This top graph is showing you different average price ranges over the next 6 months and how many listings fall into that average price range for your neighborhood here. So for example, we can see that lots of listings in that roughly $30 to $40 price range, $50 to $70 price range, and so on. But the most helpful graph, I think, is going to be this third one here, which shows you kind of price trends by percentile for all upcoming dates. So here you can see median price in this neighborhood, roughly $50. You can see it increases slightly for the weekends here. So if you have a typically run-of-the-mill listing, median price, not a bad way to go. If you have a larger listing with a view, something that really makes it special, a lot of reviews going on, maybe try pricing it a little higher, closer to this top 25%. Otherwise, if you're really trying to fill your calendar, bottom 25% of prices, not a bad way to go here. So good kind of tool to use when setting that base price, setting different minimums, and so on. And then finally, this occupancy trends calendar shows you for all 1 bedrooms in your area, what percentage of those are currently booked out for all upcoming dates. So you can see the further out you go, the lower the occupancy is, simply because people haven't started really booking dates that far out yet. Whereas last minute here, you can see occupancy roughly 48, 50% here. So, which definitely a little lower than we would expect this time of year, purely because of that decrease in bookings from coronavirus going on in most markets around the world here. So adjusting your prices, you can of course do that in the calendar here, but then adjusting the trends that your pricing is using, that can be done through the customizations on the left-hand side here. So if you click this edit button, you'll see this kind of pop-up show up with all of our kind of pricing customization options showing up here. So I know at first this table can definitely look pretty intimidating, but the good thing to note is that our system is automatically optimizing for most of these trends by default. These kind of settings only go into play if you want even more control over your prices here. So for example, our system already determines a last minute price and how we will discount that we think is appropriate for your listing. Turning this on would let you kind of set your own requirements here. So here you could say, hey, instead of your discount, I want to set a 30% discount that gets applied gradually over the last 15 days, for example. Or I want to set a flat, let's say 20% discount that gets applied over the last 7 days. So that just gives you the flexibility to replace what we're already doing with something that works well for your specific listings here. Additionally, orphan date prices. So this is a great tool for filling those shorter gaps in between bookings, where you could basically specify, hey, if there's ever any gaps that are 2 days or less, I want to provide a 20% discount for those gaps, just to make them a little more enticing, get them filled rather than have them kind of sit empty here. Otherwise, if I mean shorter stays are a bigger burden for housekeeping, you could say, hey, I'll take those shorter stays as long as someone pays, let's say, a 40% premium here. So different ways you can go about setting those discounts and premiums for those gaps in between your bookings. So minimum stay updates, we already went over all of these. So having that standard minimum stay, decreasing it for last minute bookings, increasing it for far out bookings, and so on here. So that's all available to you. Different customizations you can do, day of week pricing adjustments. Again, this is something that we're already doing. So this would purely be a tool for making adjustments on top of our adjustments. So if you have your listings priced and you think, hey, my weekends could be going a little higher, I'm used to charging a little more, you could say, take my Friday, increase it by 15%, take my Saturday, increase it by 15%. Maybe Tuesdays are slow, so you drop those by 10% and so on. So this is purely for making additional adjustments on top of what our algorithm already does. Just to give you some more control, some different minimums you can set for your weekend rates, minimums you can set for your far out dates, let's say that are more than 120 days out or so. And then my personal favorite setting here is going to be these occupancy-based adjustments, where we're essentially looking at the occupancy that your listing is getting, and depending on how full or how empty you are, will automatically either decrease or put a premium on your prices. So how you should read this chart here is that these date ranges, you can see from 0 to 15 days, 16 to 30, and 31 to 60 days. Depending on what your occupancy is here during these day ranges, we'll either put discounts or premiums. So let's say 16 to 30 days out, you're used to being at least 50% full. If you're 50% full, your price doesn't change. But if your occupancy drops below 40%, for example, we'll start decreasing your prices. If you're more than 80% full, for example, we'll start increasing your prices. So this takes a little bit of that manual adjustment out of the equation, and the system will kind of automatically update rates based off of how quickly you're filling and how much occupancy you want to maintain here. You can, of course, kind of select from different presets here. Our aggressive profile gets more aggressive to really drive occupancy. We recently introduced this coronavirus profile to really drop prices based off of different price trends that we're seeing for specific markets around the world, to really try to get you these bookings within the next 2 months here. So great resource here. If we click Save Profile, this will purely kind of start updating your rates based off of the different occupancies you have in your calendar here. Then last one to mention here, thanks for bearing with me. I know it's a long list, but just want to make sure you know what's kind of possible here. It's going to be custom seasonal profiles, where this is a great tool if you're in a highly seasonal location, or if you want to set different, let's say, minimum base or maximum prices for different seasons. This will purely let you specify different date ranges. So let's say January through April, and set different minimum base and maximum prices here. So this gives you the flexibility of saying, hey, in my low season, charge 100 as the minimum. But then as we approach my higher season, let's say June through August, charge 150 as the minimum here. These trends will kind of repeat year over year. So it helps you kind of rein in those seasonal prices. You can adjust the base prices to really kind of account for those different trends you're looking for. But again, this is something our algorithm already does. So this is just purely more control over what we're already doing here, but good for you to know that this is an option available to you here. Perfect. So that's kind of the control you have over your listings. Definitely a lot to set up if you were going listing by listing and you had a lot of properties. So what you can do under dynamic pricing here, if you go under customisations, this is going to be where you're able to set everything up either on the group level or the account level. So up here at the top, these blue boxes, these are your account level settings. So anything you set up here would be applied to all listings on your account. So if you want the same minimum stays for all listings, set them up here in the blue box, and then that will be applied to all listings. Additionally, you create groups of listings. So this create new group button will make these green boxes where the same thing goes, where you can set these trends, assign listings to these groups, then any listings within these groups would then inherit any trends that you've set up here. And then any date specific overrides, if you click update overrides here in the bottom left, you can basically say, hey, For this group of listings, for this date range, I want to bump up my prices by 20%, set a 3-night minimum, click add, then all listings in that group would now inherit this price change here. Good thing to mention here, since there's 3 levels at which you can make adjustments, this account level, this group level, and then the listing level, there is a bit of a hierarchy that goes into place. So first, we look at the listing level, see if there's any customization set there. That's kind of what we were just looking at, that calendar of rates where we were using that edit button to set different customizations up. We first look at that listing level. If there's nothing on the listing level, we'll then look at the group level. If there's a customization that isn't turned on the group level, we'll then look at the account level here. So first listing, then group, then account. If there's ever anything set on the lower level, we won't look at the higher level. So good to kind of adjust all trends maybe on the group level or on the listing level or on the account level, but using a mix of all 3 can get a little confusing here. Let me know if there's any questions on that, since I know that was a bit of a confusing explanation here. And then last kind of table I want to touch up on is going to be this manage listings page, where this gives you a good place to edit everything that has to do with multiple listings. So if you want to change the base price or the lowest price for all of your properties, great place to just go in here. You can kind of make adjustments on the fly, 120, 120, change this minimum price up down to 40, for example. On this page will auto save. Then additionally, you can kind of assign your groups here. So if you have a lot of listings, this definitely saves quite a bit of time versus kind of waiting for those calendars to load and adjusting everything manually here. So that is basically PriceLabs in a nutshell here. I know that takes us pretty much to this 30 minutes. But if you do have any questions about anything that wasn't clear, anything I can kind of help clarify, do send those in using the Q&A module now. And I think we got a couple as we were going, so I'll answer those now.